Testing 1, 2, gonna light the torch. Hi, this is Juliet, and welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to show you how to make this Lampwork glass bead. First, a bit about the tools we'll need. You'll need a tweezer for pulling some stringer. You'll need a sharp knife for something to make deep grooves in the glass, something for pressing little dots, a stump shaper. I use a brass one, but a graphite one would work just as well. You need something for pressing the bead. I have a Zuzi's Lentil large press. Any other size, any other brand of press would work. You could probably also use a pair of flat mashers. A bit about the glass we'll need. Some clear. I use Effetre 006 Super Clear. And also some white. I use Effetre 204 Basic White. And we will also need some intense color transparent, a frit. This here is Hyacinth Violet by Val Cox frits, but pretty much any other color will work as long as it's transparent. Okay, I'm going to show you how to pull a frit stringer. So I'm starting with 006 Super Clear by Effetre. Just heat up the end, just maybe a centimeter or so. I'm going to dip it in to my frit bowl. I use the stainless steel au jus bowls. They're nice. You can pour the frit back into your container when you're done. Always pour frit with your ventilation on. You don't want airborne dust particles getting in your lungs. Okay, do a second dip. Get it coated. Alright, take it out and melt it in. You can tell when it's all melted in because you don't have those areas glowing super bright that are raised, getting hit with more heat. I'm going to switch hands. Now I like to just pre-pull a little nubby on the end. A tip I actually learned from J.C. Harrell, taking her class. So I'm going to heat it up a bit, then I'm going to grab my nubby, let it sit a sec, and then pull. Slowly. Heat rises, so if you raise the thicker end, that'll help you. Okay, that's about all we need. I'm going to flame cut it, set it down on my bench to cool. If you're using a lighter like I am, you want to keep it in a safe place. Mine is in a drawer that's underneath my workbench, so it won't have any flying hot bits of glass land on it because they can become mini explosions. Safety first. Okay, so I'm going to start with one of my thin mandrels that works with my press. And I'm going to wind on a small white cylinder of glass using Effetre number 204. So you want to preheat the bead release. That way you're less likely to get bubbles. The end of this rod was a little shocky, so I'm just going to melt that in a little bit and get a little bit better behaved. Then I'll put down my footprint. You want it to be just a little bit narrower than the press. I'm using a Zuzi Medium Plus lentil shaped bead, but you can use any size or any type of press you want. You can probably also use parallel mashers for this bead. I'm guessing a Calera shape would probably work well. You want something that goes to a point at the end. Alright, so I think that's probably about the right width. I will check it in my mandrel, or my press. Yeah, that's about the right width. Add a little bit more to the left. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I want to have a little more glass for this technique. So wind down a little bit more. You want to turn that into a cylinder shape so you can use your torch top marver or a stump shaper or marvering pad or whatever you're comfortable with. I'll just double check the size. That looks good. Okay, so now I'm going to want to dip and get frit on one side of this. So I'm going to only heat up the portion where I want the frit to stick. And in my frit bowl, I made like a little mountain. And that way when you go in, you have a little bit more control. So I'm going to heat up one side so it gets a little bit clearish. And I'm going to just very gently tap because I only want it along a line on one edge. Just about like that. You don't want too much. All right, and now I'm going to take my clear frit stringer that I made a little while ago, and I'm going to apply that to the other side. So I'm going to basically lay down 3 stripes. I want to get a little warm where I'm putting it down because I want it to stick well. Lay down 1 stripe, 2 stripes, 3 stripes. Okay, and I want to build up a little bit thicker on the top. I want it to be a little bit 3-dimensional. So we're going to be cutting into this to make the vertebrae. Depending on how your stringer got pulled, you know, some areas of it may be a little darker or lighter. But using the transparent glass gives it a little bit of an ethereal look. Sort of like the look you get from some of the silver glasses, but without the cost. So, since this is going to be a lentil shaped bead, you know, we can kind of keep it in that shape. We don't have to flatten it down or do anything fancy. I'm just nudging the shape along a little bit outside the flame. Okay, now we want to take our 006 clear and we want to cover this with clear. So I'm going to use the swipe method. I'm going to lay down my first 2 swipes. One will be where the white and the purple stringer matches, just to kind of cover that gap. So I'm heating up just a little ball. I'm going to take it out just for a second, just to get the super bright orange glow, and then I'm swiping across. Just melt off the end. Okay, and I'm going to do the same on the other side where the white and your purple stripe is. Put a little bit of heat on the other side here, keep it warm. Take it out just a second. All right, swipe it across. Now we got a spot in the middle, and we probably want a little bit larger ball this time, a little bit larger gather. So I'll melt down a little bit more. Okay, take it out for a second, and let's push that down in there. And you want to push it with a little bit of force, because that forces the air bubbles out. Okay, now, since this is going to be a lentil-shaped bead, we want to have nice bead holes. So you can add a little bit more before it gets built up too much, right around the edges. You don't want to touch the mandrel, only touch the glass. You can kind of have like a little ring around there. And that will melt down nicely and give you nice bead puckers. So just be careful not to touch the mandrel. I find it's easier to do this now before you get too much glass on it, otherwise it's hard to get in. I'm right-handed, so the left side is always a little bit trickier to get at. I'm just kind of tapping and melting it on. Okay, now we want to finish encasing the other side as well. So I'm going to use the same snowplow technique, if you will. So heat up a little ball, chill it just a sec, and swipe it across. Now sometimes I come back with my swipe if I have enough glass. That way I can get the same amount on the right and the left. It'll, you know, dam it up a bit on the right side as opposed to all being on the left side. And it'll help you keep your bead a little bit more even. Okay, now I want to heat this up and melt it in a bit. Now remember, we want to be cutting on the edges, so I want to press this and sort of get it a little flatter so it's a little two-dimensional and not quite so round. So I'm going to heat up both sides a little bit and just melt in the glass I just encased and just flatten it out and nudge it along a little bit. This is a good time to also heat up where those bead holes are going to be and let some of that glass just flow. The surface tension in the glass when it's hot makes it naturally want to go into the minimum surface area shape, which ends up being a circle. And what we want to do is heat up this edge where we had the purple stringers. You can see I didn't get enough glass on there. There's a bit of a glow. You see that glow in there? So that means that's some of the purple coming through. I didn't get enough clear on that. So we're going to add a little bit more clear. It's an easy way to check. Just right over there. Okay, that'll encase it. Next we're going to take our razor blade knife, and I just have a cheap one from the dollar shop. Alright, so what we want to do is heat it up from both sides, and you want to heat it up until you get the purple glowing. So you want it soft all the way down to the white core. What we're going to do is slice in. Chunk. You want to go all the way in, and then dip your thingy into the water. Cut it in, and then dip. Cut it in, and dip. And when I'm cutting in, especially on these edges, see how it's widening in it? I'm also pushing it a little bit towards the center to reshape it. This last one, heat it, cut it in, just kind of lean it over to the center a bit. Okay. Now, because you had the clear on top, that's what makes it vertebrae grooves. So I'm just heating it and pressing it from the side a little bit. You see how it got kind of flattened out there? I'm going to press it to this from the side a little bit, just nudge it in. And now we're going to encase a little bit more. So those ridges we want to preserve, and we don't want to add air bubbles to it. So what we're going to do is add a swipe from top to bottom for the current orientation of the bead. So the swipe will be along the direction of the groove. So let it chill just a bit, then swipe. And you want to swipe it down, and that'll allow the air bubbles to leave. And do one more. So depending on the width of or separation of your grooves, you may be covering 1 or 2 grooves with each swipe. Now since we're using a lentil press, we want to build this up a little bit more. And it gets thinner towards the edge, so you don't really need to build it up the full width of it. So let's heat that in, melt that in somewhat, and use our stump shaper for your favorite tool. The more pre-shaping you can do, the less likely you are to crack off your bead release, because you don't have to move the glass as much when it's in the press. So I find that improves the success rate. Okay, so now let's do the other side. So we've got our dots on our white, and we've got a coat of clear on top of it. So now we're going to heat that up all the way down to the white, because we want to make our vertebrae through that. Slice all the way down, dip it, warm it up, slice, kind of lean it towards the middle, dip, warm it up. And we are going to add some swipes to fill in the ridges. Now since it was clear to clear, when you push it together, it keeps the clear in there, so that's what gives you the definition of the vertebrae. If you just cut the slices in without that coat of clear on top, you won't see them. You see that there were tool marks, but you won't have that three-dimensionality to it. Now we want to build it back up into a lentil shape. Gravity is your friend, so let gravity pull it into place. That's even better than using a tool, much less likely to break bead release or anything. At this point, if you didn't have a lentil press, you could just use your mashers. Okay, so now we want to heat this up and get it ready to be pressed. So one of the things I like to do is heat at the bead holes first. Then I'll let it cool a bit, but it'll ensure that the glass is a bit flowable there. And I heat the center edges, the centers on both sides, essentially along the mandrel in the middle. And you have enough heat to get to the edges. You don't want it to ooze out. I like to touch the edges of the bead press first to chill it ever so slightly before pressing the bead. That will help keep big ridges from forming on the edges if you have a little too much glass or didn't press down all the way. Get my nice bead holes. That's usually the first thing I do when it comes out of the press, is work on my bead holes. Then I take that pointy edge and I just give that just a little warm up just to smooth it out. And then I remove the chill marks from the rest. See if you can see that a little bit. See the vertebrae there? Okay, so now we're going to just do a little bit of decorations down the backbone. So I'm going to take my purple. Actually, I'll take my white. No, I'll go with purple. Okay, I'm going to take my purple and I'm going to make 3 or 4 dots down the end, maybe 5. I'm going to put one in the center. And I'll do 3. I'll divide the room on that side, divide the space on that side. Up a bit, let's go to the other side, center. middle. So you want the base bead to be warm enough that this sticks. And then you just heat up the tip of the stringer and it attaches nicely. So I'm going to flatten these now. I'm going to use my little dental pick, or my dental tool. And you can, the amount of pressure helps control the size and the direction you push it. You can help nudge it into shape so that they're balanced. So let me do the middle one here first. And the right one, those are in line, but that left one's a little bit low, so when I push it, I'm going to kind of push it in the upwards direction, and that'll help it get into alignment. So you can kind of nudge them into place a little bit. Alright, so now I'm going to take my white stringer, or my white, and I didn't pre-pull a stringer. You could if you want. I'm going to just melt a little bit off the edge here. I'm going to use the tip of my mandrel. I want it to be hot. Just a little tip of my thing. I touch it there. I let it rest for a second until it chills a bit. And then I'm just going to pull, a couple centimeters. Alright, so now I'm going to put white dots in the center of these purple. So I want to have the purple warm. Just barely get the tip clear and you can set it down. Gives you a lot of control. I'm below the flame. I'm not in the flame, around that sweet spot. So my dot is warm, so this will adhere. I just barely get the tip clear and touch it in the right spot. Okay. And again, as you are pushing these in, you can nudge them up or down and get them centered or whatever you want. It's also a handy way if you're doing like pupils and eyes on critters to make them not look cross-eyed. It's going to give this a little bit of insurance heat and pop it in the kiln. There we are. Vertebrae bead. Lots of variations you can do. Any color transparent frit. You can put stringers, decorations on the outside.